Good afternoon. I'm in Alton, Illinois.
Jill, get by the feet. That curry, get in there. You ready? 1, 2, 3.
At 8'11", he's hard to get a selfie with. It's hard to get us both in the same frame. Let's go check out the Alton Museum of History and Art. Sorry about the camera angles. I'm not used to getting a private tour like that. But the gentleman had some very interesting stories, so stick around and enjoy the video.
This room here is exhibits from Robert Wadlow's life. Of course, you know about him. He's the world's tallest man.
Oh, yeah.
The cast of his hand and his ring. And
well,
the collar in that ring will go through the center of it. It's almost like a bracelet.
Yeah.
When Robert was born, he weighed 8 pounds 8 ounces, which is what I weighed when I was born. But I didn't quite make it to 9 feet tall.
No, not quite. That's probably a good thing. Oh, age 9. He's my height at 9. I feel sorry for his mother having to deal with a kid that big.
Boy Scouts, he was only 7'2".
Wow. That's a 13. He's already, yeah, he's way up there.
Everything in his life was affected by his size. If he sat in a chair, that chair would be more than adequate for me, but for somebody that's 9 feet tall, you know, it's somewhat of a problem.
Yeah.
The thing that really amazed me, he traveled quite extensively in his life, and he worked for the International Shoe Company. He, rode in planes and automobiles and buses and whatever.
Yeah.
And the seats were actually smaller then than they are now. And I feel cramped in an aircraft seat. I can only imagine what somebody 9 feet tall must have felt like.
Oh, yeah. I know. Airplane, I'm always, yeah. I'm never close.
He flew in this DC too. And you know how cramped he must have been in there.
Oh, yeah. I wonder if he's, wow. I don't know how he fit in a seat.
Really? That was his 3rd grade school desk. It's up on wooden blocks. You see that picture there. That's when he was in the 3rd grade, and him pictured with another 3rd grader. But he looks out of place because of his size. And, of course, they had to put his desk up on blocks because his knees were up the desk.
Oh, wow.
Everything in his life was affected by his size. Of course, that's somebody's size 37 shoes. Well, he actually wore size 44 at one time. They don't have that. We do have the 37s.
Wow.
They're pretty good size. They took one of them one time, had a contest, and they filled it full of dimes. And, if you guess that many dimes, then you've got that much money. How many dimes do you think went in there?
Oh, I don't know. I was going to ask you that question. I don't know, 10,000?
You're pretty close. It was 6,250.
A little high. Wow. That's, wow.
Robert's cap and gown when he graduated from Alton High School in 1936. There's 14 yards of material in that. This is graduating class that he graduated with. They always had Robert in the back of all the pictures for some reason.
I don't know why that would be. Well.
Even in death, his size made a difference. They had to have a special casket for him, of course. And because of that, they had to leave the rear door off the hearse because it wouldn't fit in the hearse.
Oh, no.
Also took 18 pallbearers. Normally you'd have 6.
Yeah,
he had 18.
Oh, how much did he weigh?
He weighed right at 500 pounds.
Wow.
And the casket weighed right at 500 pounds, which, go ahead.
1,000 pounds, yeah. No, I was just...
the two of them together, would be roughly 1,000 pounds. I think his weight was 491 pounds, and another 500 pounds for the casket. Which was pretty close to, I think, 1,000 pounds.
Wow, 1,000 pounds. Yeah, it would take some men to carry that.
Yeah, I planted several people, but none of them weighed that much. I had an interesting incident, though, now that you mention it.
Yeah.
Several years ago, I was security guard out at Lewis and Clark College, and they called one day and told me there was a lady stuck in the elevator. And our elevators, sometimes got stuck, so I went to to open an elevator door, and that wasn't a problem. She was stuck in the elevator because she couldn't go through the door. She was so big she couldn't get through it. It took 5 people to get her out of that elevator. And what was funny, we set her on a chair, and the chair collapsed when she sat on it.
Ow.
Another interesting feature was these old cars like that. I own one of them, and it's, you know, taller than I am, and yet that don't even come to Robert's waist. And yet he could drive those cars. He actually drove one.
He must have moved the seat, or got rid of the front seat.
Yeah, he probably drove it from the back seat, but, you know, he drove one around the pits down there at Alton High School in 1936. And a motif that would have been appropriate to the Riverbend area in the early 1800s, such as the spinning wheel, the loom, the washboard, the flintlock rifle that was converted to percussion, the bearskin, there were black bears here at that time, Thunder Mug, your contribution to indoor plumbing, you know, the Melmac dinnerware, the bearskin coat, homemade, of course, and homemade banjo, homemade spice set, you know.
Yeah.
You know, back in those days, you didn't go to Walmart or something to buy it. You know, you had to make it. And an exhibit by Alexander von Humboldt. He wasn't from Alton, or he wasn't even from Illinois. He was from Germany, but he affected a lot of the things that happened here. In that Thomas Jefferson asked him to help the Lewis and Clark expedition when they was farming it, because he had traveled, you know, extensively all over the world.
Yeah.
He was kind of an amazing person. He started almost all the sciences that we think of today, like psychology, physiology, astronomy, all those sciences, he pretty much started.
Wow.
He was the first scientist to realize that humans were affecting their environment.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, he was a pretty amazing person.
That is.
Here's something else that kind of surprised me, was how the War of 1812 affected us. I always thought of the War of 1812 as a reenactment of the Revolutionary War, you know, essentially.
Yeah.
You know, it was us fighting the British for our freedom. And it did affect us, though. And here's some tombstones from a massacre that took place I'm going to tell you about, called the Wood River Massacre. We're located right here, 2 3/4 miles to our northeast is this obelisk up on the Fosterburg Road.
Okay.
And this is where this massacre took place. The reason it was called the Wood River Massacre, this creek here is Wood River Creek. There was a group of young people on July the 10th, 1814, went from a walk from Reason Reagan's cabin going to Abel Moore's cabin to fix an evening meal. This was, you know, nice sunny Sunday afternoon. Well, when they got to that point where that obelisk is, they were massacred by the Indians, all but one of them. There was one young lady that survived it. She had new shoes, never bothering her feet, and she returned to Reason Reagan's cabin, which saved her life. The rest of them, of course, got massacred. When the menfolk returned home from Fort Russell up near Odersville, Illinois, and found out that, you know, their wives and children, whatever, had been massacred, they hunted the Indians down and killed all but one Indian. How many Indians they killed, we don't know, but the record said one survived. This building here, if you walk down the sidewalk out here, you go 3 doors down, is this building. Okay. That's the Underground Railroad headquarters of Elijah Lovejoy.
Oh, hey, I found the house. The Underground Railroad house.
Elijah Lovejoy come here in the early 1800s as a minister from Maine. He literally walked here. Literally, like, you know, 1,000 miles he walked here from Maine. He actually first went to St. Louis, Missouri. In those days, Missouri was a slave state. And Illinois, of course, was a free state, but freedom didn't mean then what it does today, and I'll show you why. When Elijah Lovejoy arrived in St. Louis and seen some of the terrible things that were happening in slavery, he started writing in his Presbyterian Views paper about, you know, the evils of slavery. Of course, people there took offense at it since it was a slave state, and they told him he'd best leave for his health, you know, and good for his family. What he did, he come to Alton, Illinois. Illinois was a free state, but it was different than he thought it was going to be, because if you come here as a slave in the 1800s, you were still a slave. You were another man's property, and by law, you had to be sent back. Oh. That's what the laws were.
Oh, yeah, that would be bad. Yeah.
And there was a lot of people here that were pro-slavery anyway. Alton's always been kind of a melting pot of all kinds of views. It still is to this day. And there was a lot of Southern sympathizers here at that time. And they took offense at his abolitionist views newspaper and destroyed 3 of his presses. When the 4th one arrived, he had it deliberately delivered in the middle of the night to the Godfrey Gilman warehouse down on the river. So, you know, maybe it would escape being attacked by the people that destroyed his earlier presses. But somehow the word got out, and there was group formed to protest his abolitionist views, and in the melee he was killed.
Oh.
Another thing I thought was kind of interesting about that, not only was this the start of the Civil War when he was shot there, that was essentially the groundwork laid for the Civil War. It was to start a series of events into place that would eventually cause the Civil War, such as Lyman Trumbull, who was a congressman from Alton, who was the author of the 13th Amendment. He started a young man in his political career who's been right here in this building, incidentally. His name was Abraham Lincoln. At any rate, it was to start a whole bunch of things into place. But the thing I thought was kind of unusual about Elijah Lovejoy's assassination was about 8 and 9 months after the assassination, they decided to hold a trial to see what should be done about it. And after deliberating on the thing, they decided it was something that should have been done anyway, so they just let it go.
Different times.
Here's something that amazes me. I'm a very poor seamstress. I can't hardly sew buttons on. So the lady that made this quilt obviously was a very good seamstress.
Yeah.
But not only is it a beautiful quilt, it's also an encrypted code.
I was thinking it might be something, because there's no square.
It's a code. For instance, if you see that hanging online and that butterfly's facing down as you see it there, it tells you that that's not a safe house, somebody's watching. But if the butterfly's facing up, then it tells you it's a safe house.
Oh, that's clever.
Here's something that I find interesting about history. It's how it changes our viewpoints over a period of time. You see this building here, and it's a log home covered with a fascia to make it appear to be a frame home. The reason for that was in the late 1800s, early 1900s, there was somewhat of a stigma to come from a log home. You were essentially saying, hey, I come from the slums. So that people would cover those homes with a fascia to make them appear to be something that they, really weren't. There's a lot of those in the Alton area. But today, it's kind of a status symbol to own a log home. It's kind of 180
Everything's
degrees.
reversed.
Here's something I know that's kind of interesting. We received that 2 or 3 years ago. It was an industrial arts teacher in 1926 made this at Alton High School. It's a modular boat. It's the only one I've ever seen. There's holes in this boat here, and you can put a bolt through those holes and bolt it to this part, and this part bolts to this part, and then you got a boat, and then you can disassemble it and put it in your pickup bed or whatever.
Huh.
I thought that was kind of a unique idea.
That's kind of neat.
I'm surprised it didn't catch on.
I'm surprised it floated. Interesting. That's probably why it didn't catch on. It probably sunk a lot of them.
We'll find out how wet I get when you put it in the water.
If you put it together right, yeah.
This fellow here is named John Crum. He was our first mayor. This we call our Lincoln door. This door was taken from John Crum's house because Abraham Lincoln used to come here and confer with Lyman Trumbull and Elijah Lovejoy and other people. And so he would stay with John Crum, and that was the door that led to his room. As you can see, it's kind of bad shape. You gotta remember that door's 200 years old, too.
That's in good shape for 200 years old.
A little bit later on the tour, I'll show you one that will really amaze you.
Oh, yeah?
A few years ago, a girl I used to work with here on Saturday and I were making a display for the museum, and we wanted kind of a rustic looking board. And Kathy said, I think there's a board about that size down in the basement here. Well, it's the basement here, built this building is a historical artifact in its own right. It's the oldest school building in the state of Illinois, built in 1832. Well, it's got a mud floor.
Oh, okay.
Things get muddy down there, when it rains and whatever. So I go down there and I find this board and I bring it up into the entranceway where you come in there and clean it up. Wound up cleaning the whole museum because I had mud and dirt everywhere. Kathy said I was the messiest person in the world. She's probably right. But at any rate, when I cleaned it up, I found out it wasn't a board.
What was it?
I'll have to show you.
Okay.
It was the door. Look how clear that writing is. Wow.
Some of the Lincoln Douglas debates, the last one took place here. We have a statue down on the riverfront where that took place. Lyman Trumbull, who was a congressman from Alton, talked Abraham Lincoln into becoming a congressman. But the thing that kind of amazes me was that Lincoln and Lyman Trumbull didn't really like each other very well, even though they worked together all their lives. And one could have never done the things that they wanted to do without the other.
Right.
But they didn't really like each other. Matter of fact, Mary Todd Lincoln, Lincoln's wife, hated Lyman Trumbull so bad, and I'm surprised she didn't assassinate him. She hated him that bad.
Wow, that's a lot.
Here's something It was quite common in those days. They used to have a hanging every once in a while. People today will take a picnic lunch and go to a park, you know, on a Sunday afternoon or Saturday or whatever, and go to a park. Well, in those days they had a little entertainment they brought along with them. They had a hanging, you know, watch some guy get hung.
Okay.
These chairs here, we have 3 of these, were carved by hand by the prisoners at the Alton prison during the Civil War. That was done probably with a knife.
Some are pretty good.
I couldn't do it with the best woodworking tools there are. This is a picture of the Alton prison. This picture was taken in 1861 when they reopened it. This was the first federal prison in the West. We were the West at that time. It was built in 1833. It was officially closed. I say officially because it was never really closed, but officially it was closed in 1840 because of its deplorable conditions. One of the things that was bad about it had no sanitary facilities at all. Think about that for a second.
Yeah.
As well as poor ventilation and some other things.
The combination's not good.
Yeah, it wasn't too good a place to be. But like I said, it was continuously used for various things right up until the opening of the Civil War in 1861. When the Civil War broke out, they remodeled it somewhat and used it as a prison for the captured Confederate soldiers. And it was a little overcrowded. It was built to house 254 prisoners originally. It was a little overcrowded because they had over 11,000 Confederate prisoners there.
Oh, yeah, it's a little off.
Plus the fact that it made it even worse, in 1862 we had a smallpox outbreak here.
Oh.
And that hit the prison especially hard, partially because of the deplorable conditions there. And there was a lot of them died. There's an obelisk up on Rosier Street at the Confederate Cemetery. It has the names of 1,354 prisoners that died there. But that's not all that died there, because some of them died over on Smallpox Island, or actually originally called Sunflower Island. There used to be an island off the Missouri shore at West Alton.
Okay.
And it was called Sunflower Island. Well, when the smallpox outbreak in 1862 hit that prison, President Lincoln asked the nuns from St. Louis Diocese as well as the nuns from Alton to take the prisoners, you know, from the prison and care for them. Well, they would take them to Sunflower Island and try to care for them. Well, it would later become known as Smallpox Island, you know, due to the smallpox outbreak. And a lot of them were buried there. And how many, we don't know. Matter of fact, we had a lady who spoke here at one of our Friday night events here a couple of months ago from the Army Corps of Engineers, and she said they'd identified, she said like 400 of them they had identified who they were, but you know, how many died there we'll never know. You know, it's one of the mysteries.
That's a lot, yeah. Wow.
Here's one of the interesting things that happened. This wall still stands down at the corner of Broadway and William Street. I don't know if you've ever been down there. If you haven't, I recommend going there and seeing it. That wall still stands there. At any rate, this fellow here come here in 1937. That's when this picture was taken. You see him pointing to one of the stones in that wall.
Okay.
The reason he's pointing at it, he's like 90-something years old, and he wants that stone to be his headstone upon his demise, because he had been imprisoned there at the Alton prison during the Civil War. But the funny thing about this, or odd thing, is that his name appears on that obelisk up on Rosier Street as one of the people who died there. What really happened was, when they were having a terrible smallpox outbreak, he crawled into a casket with one of the dead bodies and made it out of the prison, escaped and survived the war.
Clever.
Here's a surgeon's kit from the Civil War. It's not a steak knife set, although it looks like one. It's kind of primitive.
It looks...
Yeah,
ooh, a little hacksaw in there.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the surprising thing was over 80% of the injured soldiers, both north and south, that made it to a medical unit usually survived.
Really?
Yeah, which, you know, both a testament to the human body as well as the skill of those surgeons. But the thing that really is amazing about that, the only antiseptic they had was alcohol, and the only anesthesia they had was alcohol. Those jars there, those are not fruit jars. That's a stomach pump unit, which also doubled as a blood transfer unit, since, you know, they didn't have blood banks in those days. They had to use live donors. Here's a picture of Lyman Trumbull's home up on Henry Street near Duke's Bakery. Picture of Lyman Trumbull, the person he mentored all throughout his life. Abraham Lincoln, which, like I said earlier, they didn't really get along very well. One of the reasons that happened was Lyman Trumbull talked Abraham Lincoln into becoming a politician. He said, you know, you got a lot of political views, you should become a politician. He did. He ran for Lyman Trumbull's office, which of course didn't work. He got beat. Lincoln wasn't a very good politician. He was a good president probably, but wasn't a very good politician. He got beat a whole bunch of times. That was one of them. He also ran against Stephen Douglas, got beat that time too. There's a lot of things about Alton that Alton's touched history, not only just with Robert Wadlow and Elijah Lovejoy, but a lot of other times Alton has touched history. Does the name Paul Tibbets mean anything to you?
Sounds familiar, but I can't think of why.
It'll come back to you when I tell you the story.
Okay.
I'm going to go look at his exhibits here in a minute.
Right.
This is Seminary Street out here. If you go up Seminary Street about 5 blocks, you'll come to Western Military Academy, which was essentially the West Point of the West. That's why it was called Western Military Academy. At any rate, Paul Tibbets went to school there. During World War II, he flew an airplane called the Enola Gay. He dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima.
All right, yeah, I was at the atomic bomb. I was at the nuclear museum over the summer.
And he was the guy that dropped it.
Maybe that's where I heard that from.
He also had a friend who went to school there with him. His name was Ed O'Hara. They called him Butch. He was the second highest scoring fighter ace in the South Pacific during World War II. And he was the first naval officer ever to win the Flying Cross, but unfortunately he was killed there during the war. But his name lives on because O'Hara Field in Chicago was named after him.
Yeah.
Nice. But the story really didn't even end there.
Huh.
Butch O'Hara's father, Ed O'Hara Sr., was an attorney, and he had a famous or infamous client, depending on how you looked at it, that often come here to Alton. His name was Al Capone. Aware of the story of the USS Indianapolis?
No.
When they made the atomic bomb, of course, it was one of the best kept secrets in history. You know, people didn't know we had the atomic bomb until they hit Hiroshima.
Yeah. So
when they transported the fat man and little boy from America to Tinian Island, which is where Paul Tibbets, of course, went with the B-29 to take it to Hiroshima, it was transported on the USS Indianapolis.
Oh.
Well, after, of course, this was top secret, so nobody knew about this trip. So on the return trip, when the USS Indianapolis is returning to America, it's torpedoed by a Japanese submarine, but nobody went to look for those sailors that were on that ship, you know, they were floating in the water and whatever, because nobody knew it was supposed to be there.
Bad for them.
Kind of backfired on us in that respect. Has an 18-inch waistline, and that was supposed to be popular in that day, and that was considered proper for a young lady to have an 18-inch waist, which really wasn't very practical, because people would wear corsets and girdles and other torture devices to make them appear smaller than they probably should have been, and because of that they couldn't breathe. So they had things called fainting benches, because the ladies would faint because they couldn't breathe. They weren't very fast, though. My grandparents took one from St. Louis to Hannibal, Missouri, and it took them 4 days.
Okay, not very quick.
There's something that always surprised me too. The Lewis and Clark expedition was started here, just south of here, down at Camp Du Bois. But the thing that surprised me was they only averaged about 10 miles a day. And I thought, boy, you know, I can ride my bicycle 100 miles a day. And then I got to looking at the riverboats they use, and I thought, God, how'd they make 10 miles a day? Exhibit of a blacksmith shop up until the mid-1950s. If you had some metal object that wasn't functioning properly or was broken or whatever, you would take it to a blacksmith and they would forge it and fix it. One of my favorite stories is a movie called The World's Fastest Indian. Have you ever seen
that movie's good.
It is. It's a true story.
I've watched it several times.
About the blacksmith that set that world land speed record with that old 1924 Indian. This airplane propeller actually belongs here. There's a place out near Lewis and Clark College called Airport Road, which is where the old air pilots used to come in with their airmail, with their biplanes and whatever. One of them's name was Charles Lindbergh.
Oh. Cool.
I'll tell you the story about Benjamin Godfrey. May have influenced one of the early automobiles. One of my distant ancestors, I have a cousin named James Semple. His great-great-grandfather, James Semple, the general from the Revolutionary War, was a friend of Benjamin Godfrey. And when Benjamin Godfrey came here, he worked with Mr. Semple, and they started a railroad. Matter of fact, Illinois was a hub of railroads. At one time, there were more railroads in Illinois than any place else on earth.
Oh, wow.
It was in the mid 1800s, but it was a real hub. But one of the railroads they started was called the Northern Cross Railroads. Well, it didn't do very well, and it went bankrupt. Well, when it went bankrupt, General Simple still thought that there should be some way to go from Alton to Springfield, Illinois, and besides just a horse and buggy. And there weren't any rails that he could use because his rail line had went bankrupt. So he took one of the old steam engines and stripped it down and put wooden wheels on the thing and drove it from Alton almost to Springfield, and it broke an axle about 2 miles south of Springfield. And it just sat there because he couldn't afford to fix the thing. People that was financing him quit financing him, and they called it Simple's Folly. But in a way, that was the first automobile, as far as I'm concerned. That was in 1844. Yeah. That was 50 years before, Henry Ford started building his cars.
That place was pretty cool. I think I missed a spot with the camera turned off on me. Hopefully not much. Sorry about the camera angles. I'm not used to getting a private tour like that. But hope you guys enjoyed it. Bye.
Stay tuned for more adventure to come. Subscribe, like, share, and I'll see you next time. Bye.